Hype for the Final Fantasy VII Remake continues to seep through the internet as its release date fast approaches. But is there a reason to be excited about a quote-unquote 1/8 remake of an old game? Yes, because it's going to be something much, much more.
We do it for the fans.
What's going on, YouTube? Justin here with the Dad of Nerds Gaming, and yes, we are talking about one of the most anticipated games of 2020. Certainly one of my most, the Final Fantasy VII Remake. But before we dive into this discussion, if you could chop that like button faster than Sephiroth chopped Cloud in Crisis Core, that's going to help us a lot going forward. So whether you've already taken your seat on the hype train, or if you think Square is about to butcher your beloved childhood, you've probably been talking about the Final Fantasy VII Remake to some extent. Square's remake of the classic PS1 RPG has been in development limbo forever, and I honestly still can't believe that it's going to be coming out in a very, very short period of time. Launch day will soon be upon us, and maybe you're one of those people wondering why people are so hyped for a remake of a game they've likely played hundreds of times before since they were a young kid. Well, today I'm going to delve into a little more about what kind of beast this game really seems like it'll be, and maybe by the end of this video, you'll share in some of my excitement as well, and maybe be just a little bit less cynical. So I'm going to hit the ground running with some technical specifications. So the file size for the Final Fantasy VII Remake's demo supposedly leaked, and we were treated to a whopping 70 gigabyte file size. Now to give you some context, that's bigger than Final Fantasy 15 and almost as big as the current build for the hit Square MMO Final Fantasy 14. So there's a lot of meat in this game just from a technical standpoint. But gang, trust me, I know, I'm not being so naive as to admit that a game's file size means it's going to be a good game. I'm not suggesting that in the slightest. But all of this information seems to corroborate what Square has been saying all along, that the Final Fantasy VII Remake, this first chapter, is going to be a full game on its own merits. Now, I've been saying this ever since the first trailer for the game dropped, but I really think Final Fantasy VII Remake is a bit of a misnomer, and they really should have called this game something like Final Fantasy VII Reimagined, because it seems as though players are going to be treated to not only a brand new, fully realized Midgar, but brand new characters and a sort of retelling of the story that hits the same beats as the beloved classic, but overall ends up being more fleshed out. Now people, in order to back this up, I'm going to dive into spoiler territory from a leaked part of the demo at this point in the video. Now, it's not so much a huge spoiler, especially if you played the original, the plot hits similar beats, but this is an alteration. So for those of you who are spoiler phobic, here's a warning as I delve into an alter of a story segment that ends up fleshing some things out. You've been warned. Don't complain, you've been warned. So from what I've heard in regards to the demo leaks, when Avalanche goes to destroy the first reactor, it turns out their bomb doesn't actually work. However, players are treated to seeing Shinra come in afterwards and blow up the reactor themselves, creating the explosion that players see in the original. Shinra's intent is to use this event as propaganda to turn the people against Avalanche, sort of to put a wrench in the works for Avalanche before they become a rallying point against Shinra and a major credible threat to the company. Now, I gotta say, I am definitely a fan of this change myself. I get that it softens Avalanche as a group a bit, but the characters, from what I understand, don't know about Shinra's manipulation of events and still go through similar developments that they did in the original game. Plus, this overall change does really play in Shinra's wheelhouse and shows that President Shinra himself is a cunning and able mass manipulator of public perception. Something I legitimately believed myself from earlier titles, and I'm glad that it ends up being more fleshed out in this version. Also, not so much new if you've been watching the trailers, but we do have confirmation that there is some sort of encounter with Sephiroth in this first title. While it's alluded that he was in Midgar earlier, we don't really have the party themselves encounter Sephiroth until much later. Again, I'm still a fan of this. I like Sephiroth as this malevolent force, this concept, some beast that manipulates Cloud's past trauma for his own twisted pleasure, something that we don't know whether these encounters with him are real or manifestations of Cloud's overall broken psyche. Seriously, this has all the makings of the kind of villain I've always felt Sephiroth should have been, so I'm really a big fan of this. Okay, we've gone over these deets from the demo right now, and if even half of this is true, I feel like we're really getting delivered on that promise of a fleshed out experience overall when the game comes out. Now, I know there are still detractors out there, people who look at this release and still consider it a quote-unquote carving up of an already finished game, a title that Square is really just working to milk. And that may be partially true. Final Fantasy VII is a beloved game, I get the feeling. People already have in their mind what a completed package for this game should be, and a game that doesn't hit the point in the story that players already see as the end, already see as complete, might not come off as complete to those players. Honestly, there's sort of this kind of hypocrisy permeating throughout the Final Fantasy VII fanbase, and it's really strange. You know, we have this feeling that this game is just a slice of an already established full piece of content, that it isn't going to provide players with a full experience that is totally worth their $60. But when Square says that they are going in, adding new things, extending things, and altering the story in order to provide enough gameplay, enough playtime to provide that full piece of content, again, that receives backlash as well, because this thing's being changed. They're like, no, we just want the same thing, just prettier. No artist actually really wants to be a transcriber gang. Adaptation is hard, yes, but writers, graphical artists, musicians, they want to add their own flair, their own spin on their iteration of that creation, even when that creation has already been established. Just because this game is going to have change, that change isn't bad simply because it's change. That doesn't make sense. That's jumping to conclusions. But even with all of these detractors, the hype still survives. It's still there. And from what I've seen in that hype, there's one universal thing. The people who are simply looking at this game as a brand new experience, a brand new game, a brand new Final Fantasy VII, are the ones that are most hyped about it. I'm in that wheelhouse, and I hope that's exactly what we get. And I'm going to remain optimistic about that, especially in light of this new information as we move closer and closer to that release. Now, of course, let me know any of your thoughts down in the comments. Whether you're for or against the remake, I'm definitely interested to hear both sides. What do you like? What don't you like? And what do you hope for? Go ahead and tell those of us here at the Den. Alright, and let's check that nerd card before we get out of here with a Final Fantasy related question. Final Fantasy VII has a song that plays for Rufus Shinra when he is welcomed in the Junon Parade. This tune actually made it into another Final Fantasy title as an Easter egg. Now, which Final Fantasy game was that? Let us know your answer down in the comments. As always, I hope you're all having an awesome and nerdy day, and I will see you all in our next video.